Hey ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gamey Daddy channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. So, some of the more important things in the gaming industry are going on right now, and it seems like because there really isn't a huge release window, because for some reason with the entirety of 2020 and the medical issues that we saw, the gaming release schedule has been altered for a very long time to come. Usually we get games that come out in Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 of the year, but now if a game is promising one of the Qs, everybody is adding 2 more Qs to it, meaning if a game's like, oh, we're going to be releasing this game here, just throw a few more, quarters into that release window and you might get your game. And so what's going on now is a lot of things and a lot of events are going on, and many of us are not seeing these. They're flying under the radar. So The Division has been one of those games where, we got our codename Nightmare event pulled. The developers promised, something of that nature in an Ubisoft Forward event. And then come down the road, they put out a post saying, yo, man, it's been rough. A lot of things have happened. We're not doing this anymore. They put it on some Twitter post and, they put an official blog and talked about it, little by little. And this is one of the things that we sometimes would criticize massive Ubisoft for doing, which is not communicating properly to the community. But in my opinion, I just want to say that, communication is quite arbitrary, because people could say something and people could perceive it, differently. I keep hearing and I keep seeing in the channel where people tell me that, Massive has a very poor communication string. And to me, I think what they probably mean is they have a very, I would say, their communication is on a leash more than anything else. But when it comes to being clear about what they're communicating, Ubisoft has a very strong stance on exactly what communication is like. In fact, from the internal whisperings, what I've heard is they have a very strong don't say anything policy until things are ready to go. So what you're usually going to get from a studio like this is a lot of, them not saying much about projects that are going on within their studio. This brings me to another event that's going on right now, which is in the Mortal Kombat community with NRS and the way they're handling their community. In fact, I think it's a very sad, scenario, because to me, I think this kind of buttresses one of my points where silence is a very, very interesting thing and can be used in many cases to, to do good for your product or to destroy your product. And while at the same time, communication can go awry if you don't use the silence in a very good way. So what is this cryptic statement that I just made? So NRS had pretty much signaled to their community that, they were going to be supporting Mortal Kombat 11, and they were, they pretty much signaled that they were going to be bringing some more characters down the road after the Mortal Kombat Ultimate, which is, pretty much something that had been unseen, a fighting game bringing an expansion, a story expansion, and also bringing more characters. It appeared that, they were still going to be doing more for the game. So people who had been mining game files on the PC versions on Steam and all of the others were able to see that, some more characters are more than likely going to come, and then there were some DLC files, only for the community to get the communication on Twitter that they're no longer going to be supporting the game. And this has basically thrown the community in a tizzy, because this was pretty much something that felt like they signaled it. Now, they did not confirm anything, but even before they even announced the signaling, they kept the community in a very dark corner. Basically, they mentioned nothing to the community for 9 whole months before dropping the news saying, you know what, folks, we're not going to be supporting this game anymore. And the community is much more ticked off. In fact, if you're a Division, community member and you say we don't have any communications from the developers or from Ubisoft, I think we need to reevaluate what that even means, because we know where we stand. They've told us that they're going to be making content someday down the road. And if they change their minds, then it's like, okay, well, you guys straight up lied because you said you were making content. NRS, on the other hand, never confirmed it, but they kind of teased it and signaled it, giving themselves this culpable deniability type trash. And then now they've basically taken the bag and walked away. So This is really, really weird, and this is really, really strange. So what we're seeing with this whole, these whole events going on in these gaming circles is, these video games, and this kind of buttresses off my last video, that really have this promise of consistent support, down the road, constant relationships and all this stuff with the gaming community. I don't think that, their sustainability is really anywhere to be found, except the development teams or the publishers are able to basically, do as little as possible in terms of talking and doing as much as possible in terms of dropping the content that the community wants, or the content that they have planned for the community, without having to be in a place where they look like they've tricked their community. Now, here is the huge contention that I've heard from a lot of the content creators in that Mortal Kombat community. If you want to go just Google NRS and what's going on, you'll see a lot of these things. Some people in that community have said, it would have been nice for them to have told us, a lot of the changes that you guys need will take too much manpower and too many resources. And right now, because of everything that happened last year, we don't really have what it takes to be able to drop any of those things and not affect the schedule of our next game. That's something that they could have communicated with their audience, or they could have just said, due to unforeseen circumstances, what we're not able to control, this is something that, we're not going to be able to do. Now, compare that to the Division community, where we remember that after the Project Nightmare Promise in the Ubisoft Forward event, somewhere around September or October, the last state of the game that I think followed, I think a few state of the games after that, Yannick came to the state of the game and he said, it's been a real challenge, and Codename Nightmare event was only going to be reduced to an apparel event because of the challenges, which he was vague, but at least they paid us the respect to come to the front of the community and say something about it. To me, I think we have the better deal when it comes to communication, even though I don't really care about communication. And, it might be shocking to think that, you don't care if the developers communicate with us or not. No. And I know content creator, colleagues of mine, Kamikaze Von Doom, and even some of my inner circle of friends have told me that it's quite necessary that this communications go on. And, I think I kind of agree. It's just I don't care, if they communicate or not. Now, I'll state my reasoning as to why, because again, it goes back to something that I've conditioned myself to do, and that is to approach these video games as a purely transactional, thing, where if they're going to do anything that is less than content, I am not necessarily interested in them talking about it. If they are going to drop content and they need me to actually provide some financial, exchange for that content, then sure, maybe they can talk and maybe I'll even be interested, because I'm not paying for communications with the developers. I'm paying for content. And to me, one thing about talk is I've realized that talk is from these developers and publishers is about building hype that promotes their own product. This brought me back to Warlords of New York. I remember February when we saw the Coney Island stuff, and a lot of people had the speculation got heavy about Warlords of New York coming out. I made a video saying don't jump into the hype, because they started doing the communications. Remember the 1.5 hour long form, year 2 reveal and all that stuff, and everybody was so excited. You could feel the thickness of excitement in the air. And yes, I think it was worth being excited for, because it was new content. And at that point, I think they earned the right for us to, they earned our ears to listen to them for over, an hour, almost 2 hours, I think, in talking about the content. So until then, it doesn't necessarily appeal to anybody that they're saying anything, because whatever they say or whatever they don't say is them throwing themselves into potentially a situation that they might not be able to deal with. And so I think when you kind of look through and say, okay, how are these things going to, resolve themselves? And when are we going to be able to see some authentic changes in the whole community of gamers that doesn't entail for us to sit there waiting for these developers to say something? I think it'll go back to when the paradigm shift happens, where many of these gaming development teams that pull stunts like what NRS has pretty much done, you know, have their communities basically respond to them, you know, in a financial way, basically hold their wallets and not give them a dime, maybe buy their games on sale, or maybe never purchase their games on sale, and not just say it, but actually mean it. Here in the Division community, I have a lot of people that have said they're not going to play Division anymore. They're still friends of mine. They know I'm a content creator, and they've told me, yo, you should come play some other games with us. And I laugh and I'm like, well, if I have some time, I'll play. And I do get it and I do understand it. But this is where players set their realistic expectations on their video games. You know, we set our expectations on what it is that we're going to be receiving from these folks. And to be very honest, I set my expectations very, very low every single time. And so far, my disappointment is still basically on par. I've not yet been disappointed by, you know, the expectations that I've set regarding all of these. So when we come to think about it, this new content that's being promised for the Division 2 down the road, I'm not banking on it. In fact, as much as it sounds very positive, or as much as I pointed out that the developers have promised that they're going to do this, I am still leaving the possibility that we might not get the content. And, you know, I can understand the kind of backlash if that possibility happens, and I hope it doesn't. But if it does happen, there is going to be a huge roar. For me, it's not going to faze me at all because I have not put money down for it. I've not pre-ordered it. If they don't drop it, I'm not paying for it. So I don't really have any vested interest in that sense, but I can see how a community can go in a tizzy when communication does not match a reality. And so at that point, the question is, would massive Ubisoft be willing to come clean and tell everybody exactly what the struggles have been? Or are they going to take the path that NRS right now is taking, basically diminishing their brand, not caring about their community, because that community made them number 5 best-selling game of 2019. By the way, that game beat the Division in sales because they came out in the same year, a month apart. So imagine the amount of bag that they must have basically carried and then make a decision not to invest in their community. Yet it appears that Ubisoft Massive is in a position where they say, oh, they want to make a, you know, an investment of that sort, maybe beneficial for today, but even they're even thinking about potentially their next games. But NRS don't even give a crap, man. They just basically said, nah, we're good, we're Gucci, and they left. This is insane, man, to see the way some of these companies basically behave. And I don't even expect anything better from Ubisoft. I just expect that the reality will be based on their own financial goals. If they see the backlash from the NRS community, I in my opinion anyways, I believe that they're going to work on this content and bring it out because it is going to be the selling point for the next product that comes out of that studio. I think they understand this concept. Even though they may botch a bunch of things, I think they are critically, you know, in tune with the fact that you cannot leave your customers, you know, angry or upset. And this showed even with the Division 1 when they were ending it. You know, Terry Spire was saying, you know, we're going to just get this stuff done for you guys as we're working on Division 2. It's not a big deal. You know, he just came out and just kind of talked this big game, and they did make some of the changes that the community demanded as well. But I'm certain that they make these changes, they make these concessions because they want to continue to push their next product forward. Hopefully we don't get to the point where they don't need, you know, any of our dollars anymore, but it appears they still do. So at that point, they still answer to us, whether it be, you know, directly or indirectly. So ladies and gentlemen, stay frosty, hold on to your wallets. That's your most powerful way of pushing this game in the direction that you want it to go. Thank you so much for listening to the video. I appreciate you guys' time and audience. Hopefully we'll see and talk soon. Peace out.